Right after
It started. So.
right after Pentecost, there were four things that the church devoted themselves to. One of the four was the fellowship, because they knew they needed to be together as God's people.
That is exactly what I've been preaching to people. Yes, you can pray and worship alone someplace else, but you can't be fellowship.
Yep. God made us to be together.
Well, he praised God by himself, but he was always with people.
Yep. And did Jesus go off by himself to pray? Yes. Did he always come back to the crowds? Yes. And especially the first few chapters of Luke, what was Jesus' normal habit? His normal habit was always in the synagogue when it was that time to do that. That was his normal way. It wasn't all like, and unfortunately sometimes we get that idea, all Sermon on the Mount outside, all Sermon on the Plain, all Sea of Galilee. Well, you got other days during the week besides Saturday, besides the Sabbath. And so so where was he regularly? He was in the synagogue.
From being very young.
Yep.
Very young.
Yep, and going to the temple,
Well, you know,
going to the Passover.
that's just like our family. When we were growing up, we were all at home. There was never any question what we did on Sunday morning. We
Yep.
were in church.
Yep, you make it happen, unless you're sick or...
Yeah.
And actually, that's where Sophia's at this morning.
Oh.
And she's not sick. Well, she is, but she isn't. What happened is she's had her baby teeth were kind of starting to push out, and then and then in that gap between the adult teeth down here and the baby teeth here, she got an infection.
I'm
And so-
dealing with the same thing.
And so they had to pull the baby tooth out. And it still had the roots. And so that was significant.
Painful.
Yes. And her cheek is out there.
Yeah.
And so she may have to have a second baby tooth taken out as well.
Breaking the rules, giving you a hug.
We'll see. But because the infection, I think it's gone down a little bit,
He's pretty
but it's
amazing.
still there.
You just never know.
And so she's miserable.
And that takes a while to go away.
Did you get the COVID or what did you? No? Just didn't feel right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad they're just able to take the baby teeth and go.
Yeah. Right.
So that's different from the continuation of when it's adult teeth, it can be a long process.
All my problems, I lose like one conscious.
Yeah, oh, I have.
And I've had another
So they don't
root canal that had one done years ago.
So they're redoing.
Medication.
Oh, okay.
I appreciate it when they admit they don't know everything, because
Oh,
the
okay.
people who think they know everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it's time for us to get started here. As I brought up, four things that the early church celebrated: the breaking of bread, which was communion, the apostles' teachings, the prayer, and the fellowship.
How did it go through there?
And that's what we definitely want as well.
My sister called. He said, "Have them come to church," and they found
Where is your sister?
She's 80.
Okay.
Wrong one or is it the right one?
I think it's the right one. So I think last week we were taking a little look at, yeah, that'll go where I want it to go. We're walking through Jesus' ministry, and I just kind of got up to part of the way into Luke, because of what I want to just kind of focus on as we walk together today. And so we're at Luke 8 as we go forward. Just to give everybody a little bit of a heads up as well. We're looking at finally taking another step of getting out of the COVID stuff. And we're one of these next Sundays, I'll say, and we'll have our Bible study downstairs in the fellowship hall. And then we'll go downstairs into the fellowship hall. The timing depends upon technology. and getting everything set up for all that to happen and take place. So today we're at Luke 8. And many of you probably know this one very well. We're going to start about halfway through the story. What had already happened and taken place here was that Jesus and his disciples went off to the opposite side, the Gentile area, on the far side, the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee. The Gennesaret is another name for that. And so they went over there. They get there. A man comes out to them, naked, having been in the tombs and shouting, and was demon possessed. So very much out there. And what Jesus then does, you have the conversation, and the demon actually says, "This is who you are, Jesus. I know who you are. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And it was absolutely right. And we get that confession by those who were, by the demons themselves. So what he does then is he casts out the demons. They say, "Could you send us over to those pigs?" He acquiesces, and then they go to the pigs. The pigs run off of the cliff and go down. So all of that happens. That's the point where we're at right now. The herdsmen had just seen what had happened. Whether they'd seen everything, don't know for sure. At least some of it, absolutely. So when the herdsmen saw what had happened, they fled and told it to the city and in the country. So they'd seen this massive thing that they could not explain or completely understand going on. So they fled. Now, there would be different words that could be used here. There is a word for, "and they went out." That is one Greek word. The Greek word here for fled implies leaving in great haste. So this would be something, this is not like the shepherds who then saw that incredible thing that had happened and said, "Let us go and tell this thing and share what we have seen." That's one word, go out and talk. There's another word, we're running to get out. And so this is kind of a fear motivation that's going on with the herdsmen. And we'll see that in a later text too. They are fearful of what's going on, of what's taking place, and who knows where everything's going to go. So they fled. They were in great fear. And they told it in the city and in the country. So they went wherever they could and started telling them. So you had herdsmen, there were multiple ones. And so they went to the city, they went to the elders, they went to the farms, they went everywhere. We've got to make sure everybody knows. And they're in fear. And so they're saying, we got to let everybody know this horrible thing that has happened. Our pigs are gone. That is significant. They did not have like many farmers have, like a hail insurance. They did not have anything of that nature. So when the pigs were gone, that is significant of what's happening and taking place. So they see Jesus do this and they run. Then once they tell all of the people, now how much time we have in here, don't know. Probably a few hours is what we're looking at. Then, as these herdsmen went out and said all these things of what's going on and what's happening, they went out to see what had happened. And they came to Jesus and found the man from whom the demons had gone, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed in his right mind, and they were afraid. So now you have this fleeing, this running out. We're going to tell everybody what this guy has done, what he's made happen. And so then the people hear, so you have the people start coming on into where Jesus is at. So they're going to come, and they knew who this person was. You go to the corollary verse in Matthew, And Matthew talks about how they had actually taken him up and chained him up at times, and he had busted the chains and broken out. They had done this several times. It talks in the Matthew version about how he would live out in the cemetery. So he would live in the cemetery. They tried to, kind of stop him, and yet with the demons that were involved, they were able to break the chains, and you have a certain amount of supernatural strength taking place there. You could think Samson, but Samson's came from a whole different place than where this strength came from. And so they knew what had been spewed out of his mouth. They knew what had happened. They knew what kind of person this was. And so they come out to see what's going on. And the man that they knew was, woohoo! Now, they see him sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed. And if people have to be surprised that you're clothed, that says something, right? And in his right mind. So he was at Jesus' feet. Now, if you're at a person's feet, you're very much in a teaching format here in what's going on. So Jesus is there, sitting on a rock, standing, probably sitting, and here he's teaching, and you have this man at Jesus' feet. Now you notice what Jesus did. He cast out the demons, right? And what was the next thing that Jesus did for the man? What was the next thing he did? He taught him. He taught him. And I'm sure the disciples that were around as well. But here you had this man who had been demon possessed for quite some time. And now he is out of the house. So he is out of this man. And what's left where he's at? It's empty right then, right? If Jesus had just left the man empty, what would have happened? Could have come back, or another could have come, and it would have been worse than at the first, which was pretty bad to start off here. And so if it was left empty in his faith and in his soul, it would have been a good thing to cast out, but that would have, but then he would have ended up at best right back where he started. So what does Jesus do? He casts out the demon, and then he starts to teach him. And like I said, you're probably talking at least several hours. How long, don't know exactly, but at least that amount of time, where the man was sitting right at his feet. And you can just imagine, just fill me up, Jesus. Whatever you, just keep going, keep filling, keep teaching. I'm going to take this all in. And would you remember it all? You would wish so. But we know our human minds would not remember everything. But he was just sitting there. Fill me up, Lord. Give me all of what you're giving me. Let me. And the Lord is filling him up because he needs it. And so as Christ goes along, he doesn't just, okay, this is done. He does things, and then he takes care of the most important. It's gone. Now let's fill you with faith and strength and what the Lord has to give to protect you from this coming and taking place. And so here again, just that kind of throwaway line, he was sitting at Jesus' feet. Is Jesus protecting him? You're seeing great compassion on this man. And that's what Jesus is doing. And then all of them come and see him, as any of them would be, in his right mind, sitting down, clothed. And there you have, and they see this, and what's their response? Fear. They were afraid. And there's different answers. Why do you think they were afraid when they saw that?
Because I knew who he was. He had demon wasn't in his right mind.
And they
Now
saw,
he is.
literally, OMG, oh my God, what's going on here? And this was a Gentile area. So so they have a different idea. And as you're in a Gentile area, what's going to come on next? What's this person going to do next? First you had the pigs gone. Now you've got this man that, and oftentimes people like ruts in their life. What I mean by that is this. What people kind of like a lot of times is the exact same thing. And it might not be a good thing. In fact, it could be very bad. But at least you know what the next thing's going to happen. We like to know what's about to happen and there's a comfort that people take place. That even if it's a bad thing, we take a comfort, humanly speaking, in knowing what's about to happen and take place. Do any of you know somebody that likes to watch the same movie again and again and again and again? Anybody? Yep. Sometimes little kids especially like to watch the same movie again and again and again and again. And they've done some research about why. Why do they like to watch it again? It's the same thing. There's nothing new in the movie. Why do some people like to watch the exact same thing again and again and again and again and again? Because there's no anxiety. There's just comfort. You're watching this, you know what's coming next. You know what the next thing is going to be. And so because you know what's going, there's no anxiety. You're not worried, are they going to kill off my favorite character? You're not worried, all of a sudden, am I going to be shocked? Am I going to be in tears? Am I going to be, you know what's going to happen. There's a part of many human beings where we, even if it's a negative thing, we like the comfort of knowing what's about to happen and take place. And this is completely outside of their everyday experience. Did they like having a demon-possessed man like this around them? I don't think so. But was there a comfort level that this was just the way that things are? Sometimes there's that comfort level among human beings. And here, he was changing everything up. I would say even for the Pharisees, that's what you run into, right? The Pharisees rejected Jesus. Part of it, they wanted to maintain their power. Absolutely, you had some of that, especially with the Sanhedrin and the teachers of the law. But among the Pharisees, part of it was a comfort of, all my life I've looked forward to the Messiah, looked forward to the Christ. Now, what happens to my whole worldview if I have to view the Christ is here? It's all different, it's all changed, right? Everything is going to be in an uproar. And Jesus brought uproar, didn't he? Jesus brought change that was going on. And a lot of human beings don't like that change, don't like the what's going to happen. You look next, I don't know. Some people thrive on it. Some people love that kind of thing. More people, though, want a consistency and what they've always known to keep going forward. And that's a little bit of the fear that's going here. He's changing everything. He's the pigs. This man, what's next? We don't know. So in that fear, what happens? They come to Jesus and they say, dun, dun, dun. Well, and those who had seen it told them how the demon-possessed man had been healed. So in fear, they say, okay, this is what happened. Jesus went forward and healed him. Then, all the people of the surrounding country of the Gennesarets, as I said, that's the part over on the eastern, more southeastern area of the Sea of Galilee, just off down there. Sometimes it was called the area of the 12, not 12 apostles, but the 12 cities called the Decapolis. So you had these cities. Alexander the Great there had formed as Greek cities. So because they were Greek cities, that's where you get a Gentile area. So the surrounding area asked him to depart with them, for they were seized with great fear. So they said, Jesus, leave us. Not because something good had happened, and not even just because they'd lost the value of the pigs, which was significant. You lose the value of the pigs, people would be upset. People would be upset. If you lost all of your crops, you'd be upset. That would happen. This was a fear over not knowing what's about to happen. And he's bringing change. And remembering a Gentile area. So, Jesus got into the boat and returned. Again, you notice Jesus didn't do something completely different. He could have gone forward and said, you know what? I'm going to stay here and keep teaching you. He could have done that. Instead, he respects where they're at, but he does what needs to be done. And I love this next passage. Okay, so first, he's going to return. They're getting off into the boat. They're going to go to the other side. And the man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with Jesus. We can understand that, can't you? Here you have the man. This was his life. He had been demon-possessed. All of these things had gone on. And now, A, it's cast out. And B, he's in his right mind. And C, he's being filled by Jesus. How much better could his life have been from where it was before? And so he begged that he might be with Jesus. Lord, let me stay with you. I've got to keep being filled up. I've got to keep hearing. I need you, Jesus. There you have a faith, right? So he had, at this point, a definite faith in Jesus. And whatever it was that Jesus had taught him in those hours or so, Jesus taught him what he needed to know. And how can I say that he taught him what he needed to know? Because Jesus did not let him come with him. Now, as much as we know of Christ, if he knew that this man would lose his faith immediately, would he have sent him out? No. He loved this man, obviously. He cared about him. He had compassion on him. He taught him. He filled him. He wanted him to know. And so he filled him with what he needed to protect himself from whatever might come down the road. So Jesus sent him away, saying, and here we see part of being a disciple. At this point, the man has faith, and at this point, you could say he is a disciple of Jesus. Not one of the 12, but a disciple, one who hears and does what the master teaches. So Jesus says to him, return to your home and declare how much God has done for you. Very simple, right? Return to your home. Now, obviously, this means that before he was demon-possessed, he at least had a family there in the town. Possibly he had been a little bit older when he had gotten demon-possessed, so that he may have had a house that was his own. Could be either one. Return to your home could mean return to your family home. Return to your home could mean he actually had a home itself that kind of sat vacant while all of this had gone on and he became demon-possessed. Not sure, but definitely return to your home. So he had a place to go and declare how much God has done for you. Go home and tell And in this case, this would be almost a definition of be a witness. A witness, and you think the courtroom setting, is one who says what they've seen and heard, says what they know. A witness says, I saw this happen with the accident, or I saw that take place, or I heard this taking place, or I know that this, from my experience, is the case. So so he was told to be a witness. And what was he to be a witness of? How much God had done for him. Pretty simple, right? God has done this for me. Tell, this is what God has done for me. And he had a pretty incredible story, didn't he? I think that's part of why sometimes we like to hear the stories. Somebody that had gotten into a very bad lifestyle, drugs and gangs, something like that, and how God took them out of that, and how their life was different now. We've all heard stories of, the specifics are different, but we've all heard those stories. And there's always something to be said when it's the big story, where I was in a gang, I was in drugs, I was in pick the thing, and God pulled me by the scruff of the neck and saved me. There's something to be said about that kind of an incredible story, and that's the kind of story this man had. He had that incredible story where God literally came to him, and as he's coming up and actually blaspheming or yelling or saying, get away, to Jesus, Jesus comes forward and blesses him more than he can ever fully thank Jesus for all of what has just been done. So he says, go home, tell what's been done to you. He doesn't say go and spout all sorts of Bible verses. Knowing them by memory is a blessed thing. He just says, tell what I did to you. And what happened? And he went away, proclaiming throughout the whole city how much Jesus had done for him. So he came, this happened, he was filled up, he went home, and he shared. There's a historical event that took place. This was in India. And I believe it was the mid-1700s. You had a monastery that was formed in India. And the thought process was, we're going to go together in this, I forget what part of India it was, but they went there, they built the place, and they said, well, we'll cloister here, we'll gather together, and people from around will come, and they'll hear the word, and then, the whole area will become Christian. So what they did is they built the whole thing there, then they went, and they lived there, and nothing happened. And they kept wondering, why is nobody coming to hear the good news? Why is no one coming right here where we're at and wanting to hear about Jesus? And this went on for 125 years. So this is a long time where this is all going on. And then after about 125 years, a young man comes to the monastery. And he comes there and he says, teach me. And so they say, finally we got this. So they say, okay, come here, sit here with us. And they started to teach him. They told him about Jesus. They told all this. And then faith was created. As they told, faith started. And he believed in Jesus as his Lord and his Savior. And so what was their immediate reaction? Their immediate reaction was, praise the Lord. Stay here with us. And we'll keep teaching you. We'll keep telling you. And he said, nope, I got to go home. So he heads off and he goes home. And then a few weeks take place and they start to wonder, we haven't seen him. What's happened? Don't know. He must have heard, must have been the place where, the word comes, starts to bear, and then you have the birds that came and took it away, or maybe the sun burned the faith out. So after a few weeks, getting to be about a month, he comes back with all of his family. And he says, they all need to hear about Jesus. And so they come, they hear about Jesus, and they all become baptized. And then the people in the monastery say, praise the Lord, this is awesome. Now stay here with us. If you go back, who knows what might happen. So stay here with us, and we'll teach you, and we'll all be together. And you can see where the story goes, right? They says, nope, we got to go back. So after having been baptized, having been filled, they go back and they share the word. Then they think, another month and a half goes by. Well, this is all done. It's all not going to happen. Wish they had stayed with us. And then the elders of the village come. And then more come. And by the time you get almost to a year, almost the entire village had become Christian. Almost the entire village had believed in Jesus. Because this man kept going back, and kept saying, look what God has given to me. Look the peace that the Lord has given and granted to me in my life. And that blessed thing that happened there is also what happened here. This man went home and he declared how much God had done for you. And this is one of my, sometimes things are understated. And that's a little bit of what we find in this part of Luke. Because all of this is going on, he says to this one man, remember everybody else over there is saying, get away from us, Jesus. Go away. We don't want you around us. Go back home. Get away from us. And you have the one man. And the one man had been filled by Jesus. Jesus just said, go home. Tell what had happened. Several chapters later, Jesus goes to the Gennesaret again. And guess what kind of a response he gets? A great multitude gathers to hear him. You've got all the people from the area that now come to Jesus to hear him and all of what he has to say and tell. And so God worked through this man so that when he returned again, they, instead of being fearful and pushing Jesus away, were now ready to hear all of what Jesus had to tell them. Pretty incredible how God works through people no matter where they're at and makes it happen.
It's kind of the same thing with the lady at the well when Jesus was asking for that too. And she
Yep.
said, just go and tell your city or tell your town or tell your family, and pretty soon the whole works.
Yep. And in both cases, you notice Jesus didn't work with what society would say are the right people, right? The right person said someone who's had 700, who's had 7 husbands, and the one that she's living with is no longer her husband. Is that the one I would think is the right person to talk to the village? No. Somebody who'd been demon-possessed for years and everybody had heard all of these things? Is that the right person, you would think, to go back and be the preacher? No. And I think God uses both of those and other cases too. And we see this as a way God works throughout the Bible in order to show us who is in charge. That God's in charge. He works through people that the world would say no, and brings incredible blessings and makes his will happen through the people that the world would say whatever. Even look at God works through fishermen. God works through a tax collector. And you notice that of all of the disciples, the one disciple that you would probably have said, this is the one that should be the one that will tell everybody. You would say, this is the one who's got the right education. This is the one who's got the right connections in Jerusalem. This is the one who's got the right people taking place that he knows of down there at the temple. This is the one who's the most eloquent of speaking. This is the one who Jesus trusted with the money as well. Who was that one? That was Judas. That of the 12 apostles, the one that you would say, this is the one who's got the right resume, is the one who betrayed him. Is the one that betrayed him, the Lord of life, to the cross, to all of that would happen and take place. The Lord chose, and we see that throughout Scripture, don't we? God chose Abraham, a pagan far away from the land, to be the father of his people. God chose David. All the other brothers went before Samuel. And Samuel kept thinking, oh, this has got to be the one. Oh, this has got to be the one. And all the ones that you would think, that's got to be the next king of Israel, he ended up picking the little runt of the litter out there watching the shepherds, watching the sheep. That wasn't viewed as important enough to be with the gathering of the family. That one, David, will be the king of Israel. And you can see it again and again. God at work. And he's in charge, not us. And I would say that's part of just how God works, showing that he's in charge. When you have Moses in Egypt, you got the plagues. You got the Red Sea. How could anyone say that that was any person and not God taking charge? It was not Moses, because Moses said, I can't even speak well. Fine, Moses, I'll give you Aaron. Here, now go. And then the same thing here. He works through this man to do his incredible work and good news. So he leaves him there, and Jesus crosses to the other side, to the western part of the Sea of Galilee, back to the Jewish end. Now, when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. And so they had been waiting for him. They had been ready for him. They welcomed him. And it's like, oh, Jesus, you finally came back. Awesome. Great. Now, stay here. Stay here. Be with us always. I can understand that. Reminds me a little bit sometimes of a dog when you come home. How the dog is so happy when you come home. You finally made it. Awesome. Awesome. Now, never go back out again, okay? Stay here with me. Okay. And so they welcomed him, and it's like, oh, welcome. Stay here. That's what Peter did on Mount of Transfiguration, right? Lord, let us stay here. We'll make you 3 tents, and we'll just stay here right with you. I can understand the feeling. So when he comes back, just before this, you had the calming of the winds and the waves. God was in charge of that. The winds and the waves. Now, we have just gone through, and he was in charge of the demons as well, right? Now, we get to the next step. This is all Jesus showing all of who he is. I'll go a little bit faster so we can get through this. And there was a man named Jairus, who was a ruler of the synagogue. The ruler of the synagogue would decide who could speak and who make sure the services were done rightly. To a certain degree, kind of like an elder in our congregations, is what a ruler of the synagogue would be. And falling at Jesus' feet, he implored him to come to his house. So here you have the synagogue ruler falling at Jesus' feet. What had happened with a man who was demon-possessed? He came and fell at Jesus' feet. There's a theme that's going on throughout this. The demon-possessed fell at Jesus' feet. Jairus, the ruler of the synagogue, fell at Jesus' feet. And I don't think rulers of synagogues would like being compared with someone demon-possessed. But that's part of the connection that's being made here. He implored Jesus to come to his house. And now we can see exactly why in the next words. For he had an only daughter, about 12 years of age, and she was dying. Here you have, your heart can go out to this man. His only daughter. It could mean one of two things. It could mean that he had sons, but this was his only daughter. or it could mean it was his only child. It could be interpreted either way. The fact that this is all going on with Jairus, I would lean towards it being his only child, just because of the reaction, but I could see it either way. And so he's got a major thing going on here. His daughter is dying. She's 12 years old. And there's going to be a connection here with being 12 years old and then the miracle that takes place between the fullness here. Being 12 years of age, you could not be married yet, and especially in that culture, it was, you need to have a child, right? And so she was just too young to be married or to have children, or for all of that to happen and take place. So this was kind of a double whammy, and especially if this was his only child, then he could go forward and I'll never have grandkids coming forward. And so you've got all these thoughts going forward and happening. So as Jesus went, so that means Jesus said, okay, I'll go to your house. The people pressed around him. And there was a woman, so now we get, Jesus is going to go there. On his way, we have this next thing. And in all three of the synoptic gospels, you have the healing of Gyruses, or the raising of Jairus' daughter, and this woman who has a discharge, a blood discharge taking place. You have this all always connected in Matthew and Mark and Luke. So they are connected. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years. And so she was bleeding. The exactness of this, we don't know. But it also meant that this woman would not be able to have kids either. So there's a definite connection there. And where do you see the last connection? She'd had this for 12 years, right? And how old was this daughter? 12 years old. So there's a definite connection that's trying to be made here. This was all going forward. And so here was this woman, 12 years had gone by. And it was enough. It was not a happens every once in a while. It was a continuous, we'll say, like we said, don't know exactly all the what's its, why's its, but something was massively wrong with what was going on. And she'd lived with it for 12 years. And though she had spent all her living on physicians, she could not be healed by anyone. Now, remember who's writing this. Luke is writing this. Remember, Luke is the physician. Luke is the one who had the doctor background that happened and took place. And we can even see that with specific names that he used. An example would be if someone had leprosy, you would say that they had leprosy. In Luke, he uses the technical definition for what is leprosy. So, on the one hand, there's the word that, like I would use for leprosy, and then there's the 12-syllable name for leprosy that the doctors know to use. Luke uses the 12-syllable names for the diseases and things that are happening and taking place. And so when he goes forward, that's why we have this one, and only Luke brings this piece in. As he says, and she spent all her living on physicians. Luke was the physician, and she could not be healed by anyone. And so she tried everything under the sun. And so she went forward with this, and she came up behind Jesus, and she touched the fringe of his garment. And immediately her discharge of blood ceased. Now the English does not do this justice for what's going on. Touch the fringe of his garment. That kind of gets you the idea, that Jesus is walking along and then just kind of touched the robe or something right there. The word that's used here, and it's the word used in the Septuagint for the tassel. that would be on the fringe of what a rabbi would be wearing. So in other words, there was a intricate tassel. And when the Old Testament uses the word, talks about this tassel, in the Greek, that's this fringe that was taking place. And what the tassel was, it was to remind the person that had it of the law of God. And you get into later rabbinic teaching, the tassel had to be made with 614 threads. One thread for each one of the laws in the Old Testament. So if you're going forward and you're getting all 614 threads and then making a tassel, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of thought that's put forward in the midst of this. And so that tassel was to remind everybody of the law of the Word of God. That's what this woman goes up and touches. And she's got faith because if I touch it, well, actually the words we'll get there in a minute. If I just touch it, I'll be healed. That's where she's going forward. And so she goes forward. If I just get in contact with the Word, there's a way that you could put it forward. This will happen. So she is healed immediately and she knows it. Praise to the Lord. And Jesus said, "Who was it that touched me?" Now Jesus could have done many and various things. He instead decides to bring this forward. And you can then kind of ask, why is Jesus bringing this forward? Well, Jesus is bringing this forward for his disciples' good, for all the people around their good, and for her good as well. So he's thinking of the people around. He's not going forward and trying to, it's like, oh, look at that woman. No. This is caring for all the people around and trying to make a point. When all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds surround you, are pressing on you. Somebody touched you." Okay, let's keep going. But Jesus stepped further on, as he said, "Someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me." And the woman saw that she was not hidden. She knew that Jesus knew. However you want to go forward. And so she came trembling and falling down before him. Notice what I said before the falling down again? You had the demon fall down. You had the Jewish synagogue ruler fall down. And now this woman comes and falls down. You're getting these connections all through here, connecting them together. She was trembling and falling down. She was nerve-wracked, would be a light way to put it, and declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him. "I just wanted to be healed." It doesn't say the exact words, but you can imagine her saying, "I just wanted to be healed," and he was healed. That's all. You can almost imagine her saying, "I'm sorry." You can almost imagine that coming out of her mouth. And she said how she had been immediately healed. So Jesus said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." And Jesus, there's 5 times in Luke that Jesus says, "Your faith has made you well." This is one of the 5. And it's kind of a whole different group every time, different person, intentionally showing that faith among the Jews, the Gentiles, is given to all. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace. The Hebrew word shalom. Go in the peace of the Lord. But now I'll just kind of go to the Bible because I've got that wrong. I meant to go, keep on going. What verse am I at?
48.
48, so 49. Now, this interlude has happened. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Have shalom. Not just go well, but a peace between yourself and God. Then, and here I forgot to put it up, so I'll just go forward. While Jesus was still speaking, so now we go back to Jairus' daughter. Someone from the ruler's house came and said, "Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher anymore." She had passed. So this young 12-year-old girl had died. So you are talking tragic with everything that had been going forward. And this is something that had been going on for a while. Not 12 years, like the woman who had been bleeding. But it was a tragic thing. And they knew that she had died. There was no question. But Jesus, on hearing this, answered him, "Do not fear, only believe, and she will be well." So the action by the synagogue ruler showed faith. There were a couple of options that could take place. On the one hand, could have gone forward and just said, "She's dead. No, we're done." Or the master said it. Okay, so we'll do what the master said. So as Jesus says, do not trouble. So as Jesus says, do not fear, only believe, and she will be well. What did Jesus just said to the woman who had bleeding? Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Now it continues on and it goes forward. And with this man, only believe, and she will be well. You see the connection taking place right there between these two things. Verse 51. When Jesus came to the house, he allowed no one to enter with him except Peter and John and James and the father and mother of the child. Now, if we were to go forward just to the middle of chapter 9, we're in chapter 8 right now, there you get to the Transfiguration. What are the three disciples that that Jesus brings up on the Mount of Transfiguration? Peter and John and James, right? Who are the three here that Jesus brings with him? Peter and John and James. So you're getting this connection between the Transfiguration in a few verses, probably about 20 verses ahead, and right here with this happening. So this is the three. And again, when Jesus goes on the Garden of Gethsemane a little bit further with three disciples, who are the three that are with him? Peter and John and James. So you're getting this connection all the way through with this even smaller group to come forward and to share. And the father and mother of the child. And they get there, and all were weeping and mourning for her. Now you get to the weeping and to the mourning, and this is a wailing that is happening. So it's not even just people quietly crying or in tears or in mourning. In fact, in the Jewish culture of the day, you would actually hire mourners to weep and to wail for that somebody has died. So there were professional wailers for mourning that would happen. And so this is a noise that is happening. It's not just the immediate family. This is the community that's taking a part of what's going on. So there's weeping, there's mourning. This is a loud wailing that's happening. And then Jesus comes, and then he says, we're going to go in. He said, do not weep, for she is not dead, but sleeping. They know what's going on, don't they? That's the next verse. And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. Yeah, right, Jesus. You don't know what you're talking about. Just let us take care. We need to mourn. Let us take care of things right now. But Jesus, taking her by the hand, he called, saying, Child, arise. They laughed at him. They knew that she died. There was no question that this was what had happened. They would not be going about all of this if they were not absolutely certain this was the case. This was not she was breathing a little bit. This was, they knew that she was dead. And the people that came forward and knew these things knew that she was dead. They had physicians to know that. And how do we know there were physicians right around? Because the woman that had bleeding had gone to every physician in order to try and get help. So you had, in those days, the medical personnel checking, and they knew she had died. So Jesus comes, reaches down, takes the young girl's hand, raises her up, and says, "Child, arise." And the last two verses here, and there's three things I want to get to. And her spirit returned, and she got up at once. Do you notice what that is saying specifically? Jesus said, "Child, arise," and her spirit came back. Now, her body, he healed that, right? It was not just that her body needed to be healed. What had happened? Her soul, the Greek word is psyche, had left. And what was Jesus in charge of? Even after the soul had left the body, Jesus could return the soul to the body. Jesus was in charge of even that. That's pretty incredible. Jesus over wind and waves. Jesus over the demons. Jesus able to heal in a woman for 12 years was bleeding. Jesus raising from the dead. So much so, returning the soul back that she was alive.
Is there a distinction between soul and spirit?
There's a disagreement on that. And so the word here for psyche would be the word that more closely associates with soul. There is another word that's sometimes used, can't remember the Greek word off the top of my head, and that could be used for an animal as well. So an animal has a spirit type thing, but an animal is still different from a human being. A human being has a soul that's there. And so some people think that it's kind of almost one and the same, but slightly different. Others that they are definitely different going forward. And there's arguments that are legitimate on both sides. But here, he brings back the spirit, and because of the Greek word, definitely seems to imply bringing back her soul to this child. And her parents were amazed. They charged them to tell no one what had happened. So her parents obviously shocked beyond all else. Amazed is the understatement, right? And yet, it was that don't tell everybody. The word isn't used here, but yet. It was not yet the time for this to happen. When was the time for everybody to know that Jesus could do this? When he raised Lazarus from the dead. That was the time that everybody know what is going on and what has happened. And the last thing I want to get to here, something that I had forgotten, going back here to verse 48 that we've got right up there. When Jesus is talking to this woman, and he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." This right here, as he's talking to this woman who had bleeding for 4 years, he had just talked about your faith has made you well. He addresses her as daughter. This is the only time in all of the Gospels that Jesus addresses someone as daughter. He has many other ways, many other things of going forward. This is the only time he addresses a person as daughter. Sometimes he says, "And you are all my sons." He uses many in other ways. But for her, daughter. And so this is a intimate term. This is a calling her his own daughter. Not saying physically, obviously, because they would have been about the same age. She might have been a few years younger, might have been a few years older, don't know. But here, kind of taking her under his wing, he gives to her this incredible blessing as he says that you are my daughter. And that by in and of itself, go in peace, knowing that you are mine now and forever. Any other thoughts as we go forward there? Next week, we'll again be in the Gospel of Luke. And then the week after, when we're in Lent, is when we're going to go through the Red Letter Challenge. And going to be going over our life as a disciple, which we definitely find throughout here. And at some point, technology willing, the Lord willing to make the technology work, we'll be meeting downstairs in the fellowship hall. And I'll make that announcement before we go forward. Any last thoughts? Let's end with a prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for every blessing and gift that you give to us. Thank you that we are your children and that you love us dearly. Watch over us and help us, Lord, to remember that you are our God who is with us now and forever. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Yeah.